शंकरने नारायण हरि ओम परमात्मा तुनरी नारायण हरि ओम माधवने शिव शंकरने नारायण हरि परमात्मा तुनरी नारायण हरि ओम हरि हरि ओम शिव शंकर ओम कैलासवासानी Om Shiva Shankara Om Kailashavasani. Om Namah Shivaya Narayana Hari Gangadharane Om Namah Shivaya Narayana Hari Gangadharane Madhavane Shiva Shankarane Narayana Hari Paramatma Yetunani Narayana Hari Madhavane Shiva Shankarane Narayana Hari Paramatma Yetunani Narayana Hari 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 Om Shiva Shankara Om Kailashavasani. Hari Hari Om Shiva Shankara Om Kailashavasani. Om Namah Shivaya Narayana Hari Gangadharane Om Namah Shivaya Narayana Hari Gangadharane Madhavane Shiva Shankarane Narayana Hari Paramatma Yetunani Narayana Hari Om Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan ki jai. Rude garbe rame Devi Ambika re. Rude garbe rame Devi Ambika re. Eni tari parichitran lok mare. Eni tari parichitran lok mare. Rude garbe rame Devi Ambika re. Garbo jovane Ganapati avyare. Garbo jovane Ganapati Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan ki jai, Pavan Sutta Hanuman ki jai, Shri Ambe Ambe Mat ki jai, Shri Mahakali Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Shri Durga Mat ki jai.
Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham shravanamangalam shrimadattatam bhuvi grinanti te bhurida jana. The nectar of your sin-effacing utterances brings life and hope to those scorched by misery. They are extolled by wise sages, and the mere listening to them brings auspiciousness to all. They confer every prosperity. Those who spread them broadcast are verily magnanimous. They distribute what is completely satisfying to the hearers. Om Namo Narayanaya, dear sisters and brothers. This morning, we will read from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, a very interesting and practical scripture. The teachings of the Master inspire us to have faith in ourselves and in God to make steady progress. Sri Ramakrishna, the Master, explains that by being sincere and earnest, we can feel the presence of God in our hearts. Today's reading is from the chapter Festival at Panihati. The date is Sunday, 22nd July, 1883. Taking advantage of the holiday, many householder devotees visited Sri Ramakrishna in his room at the Dakshineshwar temple garden. The young devotees, mostly students, generally came on weekdays. Sometimes the Master asked his intimate disciples to come on a Tuesday or a Saturday, days that he considered very auspicious for special spiritual instruction. Adhar, Rakal, and M had come from Kolkata in a hired carriage. Many of us have been blessed to be able to visit the Dakshineshwar temple garden where the Master lived. We can feel a tangible spiritual power there, as in all the places associated with the Master, Sri Sarada Devi and Swami Vivekananda. We feel calm and happy to sit quietly and imagine the wonderful incidents that took place at the temple grounds, especially in the Master's room. Many of the incidents recorded in this gospel took place here. By contemplating on the spiritual moods of the Master, the important instructions and teachings that he imparted to hundreds of devotees who visited him in this room, we feel the presence of a divine energy and know for certain that God does exist. Sri Ramakrishna had enjoyed a little rest after his midday meal. The room had an atmosphere of purity and holiness. On the walls hung pictures of gods and goddesses. Outside the room were plants laden with fragrant flowers, and the Ganges could be seen flowing towards the south. This is how we can create an atmosphere which is conducive to meditation and other spiritual practices. When we are in a beautiful, calm environment, the mind automatically thinks of God and His glory. Therefore, Master advises us to keep pictures of gods and goddesses in our rooms, so when we get up in the morning, we see a holy form first and can mentally repeat God's name. The master was seated on the small couch facing the north, and the devotees sat on mats and carpets spread on the floor. All eyes were directed towards him. Mani Malik, an old Brahmo devotee about 65 years of age, came to pay his respects to the master. He had returned a few months earlier from a pilgrimage to Benares and was recounting his experiences to Sri Ramakrishna. Mani Malik said, "A monk whom I met in Benares said that no religious experience is possible without the control of the sense organs. Nothing could be achieved by merely crying, 'God, God.'" The master knows that it is not easy for everyone to control the mind and senses. Therefore, he used to advise us to direct all our passions to God. The master used to say, "If you must have a desire, desire to know God. Be hungry for God. Be angry with God for not revealing himself to you. By giving the passions a new turn, by directing them Godward, they will not have an adverse effect on us. Instead, we will benefit and gradually overcome the negative influences of lust, anger, greed, and other passions." Master, do you understand the view of teachers like him? According to him, one must first practice spiritual discipline, self-restraint, self-control, forbearance, and the like. Their aim is to attain nirvana, that is, total absorption in God. They are followers of Vedanta. They constantly discriminate, saying, Brahman alone is real and the world is illusory. But this is an extremely difficult path. If the world is illusory, then you too are illusory. The teacher who gives the instruction is equally illusory. His words too are as illusory as a dream. But this experience, that is the experience of God, is beyond the reach of the ordinary man. Do you know what it is like? If you burn camphor, nothing remains. When wood is burnt, at least a little ash is left. Finally, after the last analysis, the devotee goes into samadhi. That is, he becomes one with God. Then he knows nothing whatsoever of I, you, or the universe. You see that the master is very compassionate. He explains that very few can think of the world as being unreal. We feel it, we touch it, we hear it, we see it, so we cannot feel that the world is unreal. But those that follow the path of Vedanta, they constantly discriminate between the real and the unreal. They feel that God alone is real, meaning eternal or everlasting, while the world is unreal since it has a beginning and an end. In the final analysis, when one becomes merged in samadhi or the superconscious state, then one sees that God alone exists. There is no you or I or the world. Just as a camphor leaves no trace after it is burnt, similarly, one who realizes God, then for that person, only God exists. The world ceases to exist. It's like a drop of rainwater that falls from the sky saying, I'm a drop, I'm a drop. But when it touches the ocean, it says, I am the ocean. Then only the ocean remains. The master consoles us and confirms that this is not the path for everyone. A simpler path is to repeat God's name and have faith in him, to have devotion and feel the living presence of God in our hearts. After doing our best in any activity, we can surrender to God, knowing full well that He is always seated in our hearts. Master says, Padmalochan was a man of deep wisdom. He had great respect for me, though at that time I constantly repeated the name of the Divine Mother. He was the court Pandit of the Maharaja of Burdwan. Once he came to Kolkata and went to live in a garden house near Kamarhati. I felt a desire to see him and sent Hriday there to learn if the Pandit had any vanity, that is, if he was egotistic. I was told that he had none. Then I met him. Though a man of great knowledge and scholarship, he began to weep on hearing me sing Ram Prasad's devotional songs. We talked together a long while. Conversation with nobody else gave me such satisfaction. He said to me, give up the desire for the company of devotees. Otherwise, people of all sorts will come to you and make you deviate from your spiritual ideal. Of course, Master's purpose on earth was very different. He did not come for himself, but to help suffering humanity and to teach us how to lead prayerful lives, fruitful lives. Master saw God clearly, and no one could make him deviate from the truth or the highest spiritual ideal. In fact, the Master transformed the lives of many people who appreciated his loving advice and teachings. No one could forget the Master after meeting him even once. The Master was not an ordinary person. He came to help us, and many people gained by being in his holy company. The Master loves humor and continues recalling his meeting with Padmalochan. Master says, once Padmalochan entered into a controversy by correspondence, that is through letters, with Utshavananda, Vaishnava Charan's guru. He told me an interesting incident. A meeting was called to decide which of the two deities, that is Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma, was greater. Unable to come to any decision, the Pandits at last referred the matter to Padmalochan. We must remember that Padmalochan was a court Pandit. With characteristic guilelessness, Padmalochan said, how do I know who is greater? Neither I nor any of my ancestors back to the 14th generation have seen Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma. In other words, don't worry about who is greater. Have faith in God or your deity and pray regularly. Cultivate good morals and be charitable. How will it help to know who is greater? Both are great as they are a part of the same God or Supreme Brahman. Master also used to always advise devotees not to reason too much, as it dampens our devotion to God. It is helpful to have simple devotion to God rather than reason about everything. Master says, about the renunciation of lust and gold, Padmalochan said to me, why have you given up those things? Such distinctions as this is money and that is clay are the outcome of ignorance. What could I say to that? I replied, I don't know all these things, my dear sir, but for my part, I cannot relish such things as money and the like. If we remember, Master took mud and money, some coins in one hand and mud in the other hand, and throwing them both into the Ganga, Master said, this is clay and so is that. So Master was able to overcome the difference between mud and coins. So he was not attached to money. It is clear that Padma Lochan did not recognize the greatness of the Master, whose mind was always merged in God thought. Yet the Master discriminated in order to teach us. By indulging in worldly pleasures, we become attached to them, and there is no end to worldly desires which take our minds away from God. It is only in God that we can find complete satisfaction and contentment. So the Master teaches us that we must not be attached to the things of the world. Of course, we have to use what we need to progress, but beyond that, we should not be attached. By reading the Gospel regularly, we learn valuable lessons that guide us in life. By practicing some of the teachings, we feel safe, knowing that God is always with us. May God bless us so that we can feel joy within, feel that God is protecting us, guiding us, and holding us by the hand so that we do not fall on this path of spirituality. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Ramakrishna charanam sharanam mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam bhavachalakaranam Shri charanam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam bhavachalakaranam Shri charanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam bhavachalakaranam Shri charanam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam bhavachalakaranam Shri charanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam bhavachalakaranam Shri charanam Mati malaharanam mangalakaranam bhavachalakaranam Shri charanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Mama Ramakrishna charanam sharanam Om Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan ki jai Devi Sureshwari Bhagavati Gange Tribhuvana Tarini Parala विधुमुक्ता धवलतरङ्गे दूरीकुरु मम दुष्कृतिभारं कुरु कृपया भव सागरपारं तव जलममलं येन निपीतं परमपदं खलु तेन गृहीतं मातर्गङ्गे त्वय्यो भक्ता तिलकं द्रष्टुं नयमः शक्तः पतितो धारिणि जानवी गङ्गे खण्डितगिरिवरमण्डितभङ्गे विश्वजननी है मुनिवर कन्ये पतित निवारिणि त्रिभुवन धन्ये कल्पलतामिव फलदां लोके प्रणमति यस्त्वां न पतति शोके पारावारविहारिणि गङ्गे विमुखयुवति कृततरलापाङ्गे तव चेन्माता स्रोतस्नाता पुनरपि जठरे सोऽपि न जाता नरकनिवारिणि जानवी गङ्गे कलुषविनाशिनि महिमोत्तुङ्गे पुनरसदङ्गे पुण्यतरङ्गे जय जय जानवी करुणापाङ्गे इन्द्रमुकुटमणिराजितचरणे सुखदे शुभदे भृत्या शरण्ये रोगं शोकं तापं पापं हर मे भगवति कुमति कलालं त्रिभुवन सारे वसुधाहारे त्वमसि गते मम खलु संसारे अलकानन्दे परमानन्दे गुरु करुणामयि कातरवङ्गे तव तत्निकटे यस्य निवासा खलु वैकुण्ठे तस्य निवासा वरमिह नीरे कमतो मीना किं वा तीरे शरदक्षिणा अथवा स्वपचो मलिनो दीनास्तवनानि दूरे नृपतिकुलीना भो भुवनेश्वरि पुण्ये धन्ये देवी द्रवामयि मुनिवर कन्ये गङ्गास्तवमिमा ममलां नित्यं पठति नरो यस्य जयति सत्यं येषां हृदये गङ्गा भक्तिस्तेषां भवति सदा सुखमुक्ति मधुरा कान्ता पच्यति काभि परमानन्दकलितललिताभि गङ्गा स्तोत्रम् इदं भवसारं वाञ्छितफलदं विमलं सारं शङ्करसेवक शङ्कररचितं पद्धति सुखी स्तव इति च समाप्तः। ॐ श्रीरामकृष्ण भगवान की जय।
Om Namo Narayanaya, dear sisters and brothers. Let us concentrate our minds on the beautiful form of God seated in our hearts. Encouraging us on the path of devotion, Sri Ramakrishna says, "Sing with devotion the hallowed name of the Lord, and the mountain of your afflictions will vanish, just as a mountain of cotton will burn to ashes and disappear if but a spark of fire falls on it." Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu, Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat.
जय श्री गुरु महाराज की जय, महामाई की जय, स्वामी जी महाराज की जय, गंगा मात की जय, महावीर स्वामी जी की जय, सर्व ऋषि मुनियों की जय। पार्वती पतये हर हर महा